Shadow is a once powerful, shaggy sheepdog confined to a damp, messy backyard for years. His fur is matted from neglect, and the dirt clinging to him makes him look like a ghost of his former self. His eyes, once bright with energy, are now hollow with pain and loneliness. His current owner never calls him by name. Perhaps no one even remembers what it was. But everything changed when Marcus, a kind-hearted young Swiss man, passed by that crumbling house. Like others, he might have walked right past, but then he spotted a faint movement in the corner of the yard. As he stepped closer, Marcus saw Shadow, emaciated, his coat patchy, his exhausted eyes barely holding on to hope. Before continuing, hit the like button, subscribe, and share this story. Together, we can rewrite the fate of forgotten animals. Your support ensures more stories like this get told. The rusty chain around Shadow's neck was the only thing tethering him to a rotting wooden post. No matter the weather, bitter wind, pouring rain, or scorching sun, he remained in that filthy corner, invisible to the world. On freezing nights, Shadow shivered, aching for warmth but receiving none. Yet despite everything, a flicker of hope still lived in his eyes. Every time someone walked by, he stretched a trembling paw through the fence, silently begging for someone to notice him. But day after day, no one stopped. No one cared. Then, one gray afternoon, Marcus passed by again. This time, he didn't just glance. He saw Shadow, saw him. And in that moment, something inside Marcus broke. Shadow lifted his weary head, meeting Marcus's gaze, and weakly raised his paw as if whispering, "Please, save me." Faced with that scene, Marcus felt his heart tighten, a mixture of anger and pity. He immediately took a few photos of Shadow and posted them on social media, along with a cry for help. Unexpectedly, Marcus's post attracted thousands of likes and comments. People were outraged by Shadow's image, demanding immediate action. Marcus knew it was time to do something concrete. The next morning, Marcus returned with the volunteers and the local police force. They knocked on the door of the dilapidated house, and a slovenly, cold-faced man appeared. "What do you want?" he snapped, looking at the group with eyes full of annoyance. Marcus held out a photo of Shadow, his voice shaking with anger. "We came to rescue this dog." The man sneered, throwing out the tattered registration paper. "Take it if you want. I don't need it anymore." After hearing that, a volunteer stepped forward to untie the rusty chain around Shadow's neck. Shadow walked limply, both happy and scared, still not believing that he had escaped captivity. When Marcus gently touched his head, Shadow closed his eyes as if he was about to cry with emotion. "It's going to be okay, little one," Marcus said softly, tears welling up in his eyes. That was Shadow's first step into a new life. It turned out that Shadow was a Swiss Shepherd, although his matted fur made him hard to recognize. The volunteers immediately took Shadow to the vet for a checkup. The vet said that Shadow was severely malnourished, had many old wounds that had not healed, and needed special care. Marcus, having made up his mind beforehand, offered to adopt Shadow. He wanted to make sure that Shadow would never have to return to that dark life. On the way home, Shadow curled up in the back seat of the car, his head resting on Marcus's leg, as if seeking safety. The wind blowing through the window made Shadow shiver. But now he was no longer alone. Marcus whispered to Shadow, promising him a warmer future. Shadow didn't understand all of his words, but he could feel the sincerity in his voice. Shadow's tired eyes flashed with a hope that he had long lost. When he got to the apartment, Shadow hesitated at the door, never having set foot in such a cozy space before. "It's okay, come in," Marcus gently comforted. But Shadow was still trembling and hesitant. Finally, Marcus sat down next to him, reaching out to gently hold Shadow's paw as if to encourage him. Shadow took each step carefully, his nose sniffing the soft carpet for the first time in his life. A moment later, Marcus brought a bowl of delicious food and placed it in front of Shadow. Shadow looked around, not daring to approach, because his harsh past made him not dare to believe that food could come easily. "This is for you," Marcus said softly, placing a piece of food in the palm of his hand. Shadow sniffed, then timidly tasted it, as if feeling the first real taste in many years. That night, Marcus prepared a soft bed for Shadow next to his own. But Shadow still lay in the corner of the room, trembling, silent, carrying mental scars that were difficult to erase. A few weeks later, Shadow's fur gradually became smoother, his eyes less fearful, and his health also recovered. He began to explore the surroundings, sniffing at objects, sometimes happily wagging his tail when Marcus came home from work. But Shadow always hovered around Marcus's feet, afraid that he would disappear. Marcus, noticing that affection, was even more determined to take care of Shadow wholeheartedly. One day, he decided to take Shadow out of the apartment for a walk. The soft collar replaced the rusty chain, and Shadow was nervous when he stepped out into the street. The loud sounds of traffic and the bustling crowd made him nervous. However, Marcus's presence beside him gave Shadow a sense of security. The two walked on the new street, marking the beginning of another journey in Shadow's life. The old scars did not disappear, but with each passing day, they gradually faded with love and patience. While Shadow gradually stabilized, an unexpected event occurred. Marcus received an anonymous letter at his door. The letter said that Shadow's previous owner, who called himself Carl, had been looking for the dog for many years. "This is my dog. He mysteriously disappeared," the bold letters read. Marcus was bewildered. How could Shadow have another owner? And if that was true, why was he so painfully chained? Marcus looked at Shadow, now lying warmly at his feet, his eyes filled with trust. He didn't want to leave Shadow, but the truth needed to be clarified. Marcus called the phone number listed in the letter. A male voice answered. "I'm Carl. Did you really find my dog?" The voice was optimistic and a little tearful. Marcus hesitated for a moment, then invited the other person to meet, hoping to know the source of the problem. The next morning, they met at a small cafe right in the center of Bern. Carl was a middle-aged man with a haggard face and silver hair. When he saw Shadow, he choked out, "Oh my God, here's my Rusty." Shadow looked at Carl with a wary gaze, his back arched slightly, ready to growl. Marcus patted Shadow's head, worriedly asking, "Are you the old owner? Why was Shadow chained?" Carl shook his head, his voice sad. "I'm not the one who abused him. I lost him 3 years ago. At that time, I lived in the suburbs of Greer. Rusty was broken into and taken away by someone. I put up a wanted poster, but there was no trace of him. I thought he was dead." Marcus looked at Shadow, now trembling, the memory of the chain still lingering. Carl offered to hug Shadow, but Shadow pulled away, clearly not recognizing his former owner. Marcus understood that this was more complicated than he thought, because Carl was not at all like an abuser. After a while of chatting, he learned that there was a notorious underground dog trafficking and fighting ring in the suburbs of Greer. It was there that many dogs like Shadow were tortured, forced to fight, or simply abandoned when they were no longer of any use. Carl suspected that Shadow had fallen into the hands of bad guys and ended up in the man's backyard as a piece of trash. Marcus recalled the scars all over Shadow's body and realized that this was a very high possibility. He decided to investigate, expose the dark network, and make sure that no other dog would suffer the same pain. That night, Marcus went online, contacted rescue groups and the media, and shared the whole story. He also made an appointment with Carl the next day to go to the place considered a dogfighting den. Before leaving, Marcus looked at Shadow and whispered, "You will never be chained again. I promise." Shadow gently placed his muzzle on Marcus's hand, his eyes shining with trust, as if confirming a future of freedom and happiness. I thank you for taking the time to watch our entire video. Please subscribe to the channel so that we can bring more heartwarming stories like this one.